She thought she had finally found a place to call home, a roof where she could rest her head and people who would accept her. But in a matter of moments, everything was ripped away, her worth dismissed, her presence erased, and her very identity replaced. She was cast out, discarded like she meant nothing, all because of the color of her skin. But what no one expected was what happened after, an unseen twist that would change everything. What could possibly turn a moment of cruelty into a story no one would ever forget?
Her name was Maya, a hard-working young woman who believed that kindness could soften even the hardest of hearts. She wasn't wealthy, she wasn't powerful, yet she carried herself with quiet dignity. For months, she had been living in a small house she thought of as her sanctuary. She swept the floors with care, cooked meals that filled the air with warmth, and treated the place as if it were her own.
To Maya, this wasn't just shelter. It was a chance to build stability, to breathe after years of uncertainty, to finally belong somewhere. Neighbors would smile when they saw her, admiring her gentle spirit, though few knew the heavy burdens she carried behind her smile. At first, the change was so subtle, Maya almost missed it. A cold glance where once there had been warmth, a hushed conversation that ended the moment she stepped into the room. Chairs pulled closer together, whispers carried on the breeze as though they were secrets she was never meant to hear. Still, Maya told herself it was nothing. She had always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, but beneath the quiet smiles, something darker was taking root. One evening, she returned to the house after a long day, only to find a stranger sitting comfortably in the living room. She was young, fair-skinned, and greeted everyone with the ease of someone who already belonged. The others rushed to introduce her, their voices filled with excitement. Maya forced a smile, though her chest tightened with unease. Who was this girl, and why did it suddenly feel like Maya was the outsider in her own home? Days turned into weeks, and the shift became impossible to ignore. The new girl was showered with praise, while Maya's contributions were brushed aside. Meals she prepared were barely acknowledged, chores she completed went unnoticed, and when she tried to join conversations, silence would fall like a heavy curtain. The more Maya gave, the more invisible she became. Then came the moment that shattered everything. She walked in to find her belongings stacked neatly by the door, as if her life could be packed into a few bags and forgotten. With carefully chosen words, they told her she was no longer welcome. Their excuse was vague, wrapped in false politeness, but the truth was clear. She was being replaced, cast aside for the white girl who had slipped so effortlessly into the role she had once filled. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped outside, her bags heavy in her hands, her spirit heavier still. The door shut behind her with a finality that echoed in her soul. She felt stripped of dignity, robbed not just of shelter, but of her humanity. How could people who had smiled at her, eaten her food, and relied on her kindness suddenly decide she was no longer worthy? But the story didn't end there. What Maya could not see in that moment of despair was that life was quietly weaving a thread of justice. The same people who had discarded her so easily were about to face consequences they never imagined. The tables were turning, and soon their cruelty would come back to haunt them.
The night after Maya was forced out, the weight of betrayal pressed down on her like a storm. She wandered the streets with nowhere to go, the cold air biting her skin, each step echoing the cruel truth. She had been discarded, not because of who she was, but because of what she looked like. Hunger clawed at her stomach. Exhaustion blurred her vision. Yet it was the sting of rejection that cut the deepest. Meanwhile, inside the very house that had turned her away, cracks began to show. The girl who had replaced her lacked the quiet strength Maya carried. The chores were ignored, meals went unprepared, and tension simmered behind closed doors. What had once seemed like an exciting change soon revealed itself to be chaos. But Maya knew nothing of this. All she knew was the bitter chill of the night and the gnawing question of how she had become so disposable.
Compassionate, serious, and suspenseful, fast, emotional with dramatic. Build intensity in the rising action, deliver the climax with urgency and heartbreak, and end the resolution with hope and dignity. In time, Maya found her footing again. The woman who had lifted her up became more than a rescuer. She became a reminder that compassion still existed, even in a world so quick to judge by skin. Maya rebuilt piece by piece, not with bitterness, but with quiet determination. She discovered strength in places she never knew it lived, and though the scars of rejection lingered, they became proof of her survival, not her defeat. Meanwhile, the house she once called home crumbled from the inside. The very people who had cast her out found themselves drowning in their own choices. Without Maya's care and resilience, their comfort turned to disarray. The girl they had placed above her vanished as quickly as she had arrived, leaving behind nothing but tension and regret. The whispers that once celebrated her replacement became whispers of shame. But the true victory was not in their downfall. It was in Maya's rise. By refusing to let hatred define her, she embodied something far more powerful than revenge: resilience, dignity, and grace. Her story is not just hers. It mirrors the experience of countless others whose worth has been questioned because of the color of their skin. How many lives have been dismissed? How many voices silenced simply because of prejudice? And how many more stories like Maya's will it take before the world finally learns? Racism isn't just an act. It's a wound that echoes far beyond the moment it's inflicted. But every act of kindness, every voice that refuses to be silent, has the power to heal. So, the question remains, when faced with injustice, will we stand by in silence, or will we choose to see, to act, to value every human life equally?